Oh man, I don't know if I'm in the right state to do this, but I'm going to give it a try. Everything I had to say went out of my. Okay, I know how to rap. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Mercury Black, and I'm bipolar. I'm going to respond to the Jordan Peterson not New York Times. Anyway, the Times article on Peterson, and I guess others been written about that article recently. I wanted to start by saying I'm bipolar. So if you're somebody who took those headlines that say Jordan Peterson diagnosed schizophrenic, if you found that was like a slam on Peterson, I will start by saying I'm bipolar, I'm a lunatic, and so you probably won't care what I have to say about this. So don't waste your time listening. And I'm going to make a point later, hopefully. One of the main points I wanted to make was that it wouldn't matter if Peterson had schizophrenia or not. He would be worth listening to. However, at the same time, I'm not being hypocritical to say that it's fair to discredit me and to say I don't want to listen to Mercury because he's bipolar, whereas it would be unfair to say that you couldn't listen to Jordan Peterson because he's schizophrenic. Hey, Longstone, good to have you here. I'll check stuff in the chat after I rant a bit on this. But yeah, I don't feel in the right state to be doing this. Too depressed. A lot of my brain's very shut down. I didn't come across the articles first. The day Peterson put up the unedited, audio of the whole interview, I watched that and only read the article today. Where do I start? Okay, so for people who don't know what I'm talking about, here, I'll see if this gets any of the thoughts back in my head. So last night I saw Michaela Peterson's response, and she said her dad wouldn't be doing one. And she pointed out that he'd, on his website, posted this. So Peterson wrote why I stupidly agreed to an interview request from the Sunday Times. I was recently the subject of a Sunday Times cover story written by Decca Aitkinson. Non-subscribers who wish to read it can sign up for 2 free articles a week here. I just did that and read the article. I released the full audio of the interview on YouTube here, so anyone interested could find out for themselves what was actually said. Given the tenor of the piece, very critical of me and even more of my daughter Michaela, and the fact that I've been subject to very similar unflattering coverage many times in the past, it appears reasonable for even those inclined to my defense to ask, how could I possibly have been stupid enough to agree to the interview and story? The same question has been plaguing me. In consequence, I went back to the original letter of invitation I received from one of the Sunday Times acquisition editors, Miss Megan Agnew. Here it is in its entirety. So the Sunday Times Magazine wrote, "Hi, Michaela. I hope you're well. I don't think we've worked together before. I'm a commissioning editor at the Sunday Times Magazine in London. I wanted to get in touch about a potential interview when the time is right with your father, Jordan Peterson. We've been following his story closely over the past weeks and hoping that he is doing better. It is such an exhausting, uncompromising virus. It must be an incredibly stressful period for all of you. When the time feels right, we would love to send one of our writers to speak with him for the magazine. I like to think we tell difficult stories with generous space, time, and objectivity. We run long-form features telling the whole story rather than short, flashy headlines. The interview would cover his life and career to date, family life, illness, recovery, and upcoming plans and projects for the future. It would allow you to clear up any factual inaccuracies that might have been reported in the press, telling his side of the story, as well as celebrating his life and career so far. Let me know what you think. I've attached some interview examples here so you can get an idea of what it might look like. It would be great to talk. Best wishes, Megan." And then so Peterson wrote in response, I reread this polite, positive, and hopeful interview request letter of today after the promised Sunday Times piece of my daughter and I was published. I can't help but be struck by the vast gap between what was offered and the resulting interview, which no reasonable reader could possibly consider celebrating my life and career so far. As indicated by an overwhelming majority of the readers of this piece, do I actually have to read the rest of this? No, you guys can read it yourself. And given that this channel's originally started out based around Peterson, and most of our audience, I imagine, know what's going on. I'm going to jump into just a couple things, if I can get them in my head, to talk about what I thought of it. Okay, I will get to the catchy fucking shit of schizophrenia and drug problems and that stuff in a minute. But I want to start with something else because I don't want to forget this. And even though I haven't watched much about people's reactions to this so far, I'm expecting this isn't one of the main points other people responding to this are making. I think when you listen to the audio version of this, in two places, or in two ways, it really points out how powerful compassionate attention is. To pay attention to somebody and to be fully present with them, to give them your full attention. And to add to that, whether it's genuine or not, the appearance of compassion and care, how incredibly fucking powerful that is. So one point, I think, everything's jumbled in my head. So I might be mixing things from other places, but I think in the audio interview, the first time Peterson chokes up is when he talks about people he's helped. And he starts crying, which, some people will put him down for the way he cries talking about certain things. I admire it. As someone else who has cried in public, like you can find embarrassing videos of me crying on this channel. It sucks to do that. It's difficult to do that. And to me and Peterson, it's just a sign of showing how much he fucking cares. He's obviously a really sensitive individual who genuinely cares very, very deeply. And so I'm impressed that he puts himself out to talk about shit that makes him cry. But anyway, what he says at one point is that it's just I'm paraphrasing horribly, but that it's overwhelming how little encouragement people need. And he talks about how, because of his career, people come up to him and get into a deep conversation with him right away, and how he can have a profound effect on people just by listening. It's all that shit he talks about. Like, you listen and you actually pay attention to the person. You're not thinking about other things, thinking about what you're going to say next, that you genuinely care about them, that if they tell you about something that was difficult, that you show compassion, and that you actually emote along with them, that you feel for them, and that when they talk about something going well, that you're genuinely happy for them. It, more than one interview, it chokes him up to talk about how little encouragement it takes. And obviously how little encouragement people get to make a real difference with somebody. And having worked on this channel, I've had a similar experience, just scaled way, way the fuck down. A couple dozen people I've talked to. I also find that when I have these conversations, like one-on-ones with people, it goes deep right away. And that if you just listen with compassion and are present with them, that you can make a big deal in their life. So that's one spot where it shows the power of compassionate attention and what you can do with that. The other thing is I find the entire fucking interview a demonstration of that. Because, you know, Peterson's thing, how could I stupidly agree to doing this? It shows even Peterson, with all the positivity he gets, the interviewer sounded like a family member. It's like, it was as if Jordan and Michaela were talking to some, you know, like aunt or somebody. There was this, oh, how did you feel? This compassion, this. But like even Peterson, when offered full attention, compassion, fairness, was sucked in, opened up really deeply with this person. And I'm not blaming the individual author. There's this bigger phenomena of like what the media is doing with this. But they were able to get him to open up and then exploit that for articles that will get a lot of views. But just to show the power of that. And you can use that to get people to open up to you, and, you know, you can do harm with it. But it is so easy to do good with it. If you listen to people the way that reporter was listening to them, people will open up to you. And if instead of spinning everything, like, because obviously, like if you're just one-on-one, there's not that whole element of writing an article about it after. But if you just fucking listen to people with compassion and care and like open-minded, it has profound fucking fuck. I just saw like the chat. There's a whole stream of shit I'm missing. There's a fair number of people watching, and that made my head seize up again. Sorry about this. I considered waiting longer and then doing a response video when I thought I would do better. But there's a high probability that if I didn't just fucking force it out today, it wasn't going to happen at all. All right, so I'm going to loop around to the fucking catchy diagnosed with schizophrenia thing. And make the, because I promised that point at the beginning, right? In the article, like there's a bunch of headlines of people wanting to push the Peterson was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And for someone who didn't listen to anything up to this, from what I understand, he's not schizophrenic. It's his immune condition and like medicine and all that shit. And Peterson makes that distinction that it's not a mental illness, it's like a physical illness. But my point on that is, so what? Who gives a fuck? What the fuck is the difference? He's had visionary experiences. He's had a lot of depression. He had this akathesia and all that stuff. The fact that he had all of that phenomenon does matter. And I'll get to that in a minute. Like the fact of all that phenomenon is relevant. But whether that's from a drug reaction, a physical condition, or schizophrenia, or bipolar, what the fuck is the difference? Like it makes a difference from treatment perspective, from understanding it perspective, but from the perspective of, should I listen to that person? How valuable is their contribution? It doesn't make a fucking difference. First of all, like, what is the difference between a mental illness and a physical condition? Like, isn't schizophrenia something genetic? Isn't there a physical component to that? What's the difference exactly between our mind and our physical body? To say it's not a mental illness, it's a physical illness, are we getting a dualism here of the mind as something separate from the body and the brain? We don't know how consciousness works. What's relevant is he has that phenomenon. And now I said at the beginning that it's fine not to listen to me because I'm bipolar. If you want to listen to me because I'm bipolar, how do I put this? Okay, the point is that with me, even before I went crazy, I was a waste of potential. I didn't apply myself to anything. My fucking diploma's in farming. Has nothing to do with psychology or philosophy or anything. I never applied myself before I went crazy. I didn't develop any credentials that would give me any reason to be talking in this sphere. And then when I went crazy, I went completely fucking nuts. And since then, I have developed my ideas kind of like through my insanity. I took a sort of shamanic route on this. I'm mystical. My ideas come from talking to invisible entities, angels, imaginary fucking beings. And so if you're somebody who's like, I don't care about the ramblings of some mystic bipolar person that doesn't worry about grounding all their shit in science and whatnot, it's like, that's fair. You could say, I don't want to listen to you. It's too fucking, like, you could argue it's just woo-woo, new age to listen to me at all. That's relevant, but it wouldn't be relevant if also, like, compared, like, just to compare myself to Peterson for a moment, it's like, not only am I crazy, I'm crazy and I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I live on disability. I haven't found a way to function in the world. My fucking marriage didn't work out. There's all these fucking reasons why you could choose to not listen to me. But the fact that I'm bipolar wouldn't be a reason not to listen to me if I had pulled my fucking life together, gotten a doctorate like Peterson did, worked for decades, doing real good in the world. It's like, if somebody had all that and they're schizophrenic or bipolar, and you want to say, I don't have to listen to them, because let's sort of jump over to Peterson. Whether it's schizophrenia or not. And it's not that I'm saying I think Peterson is schizophrenic. I believe him when he says, and I do get the distinction he's making, as much as I was saying, what the fuck's the difference? I believe him. But even if the answer were the reverse, or what he could have added to the end of, look, I'm not schizophrenic, this isn't a mental illness, this is a physical illness, I think he could have added, and even if it were schizophrenia, then so what? If the reason that my mind works the way it does is partially due to schizophrenia, and if being schizophrenic, I became like a PhD, worked as a therapist for all this time, did all the fucking things he did, developed all his material and grounded it all as much as he can in science and research, then who gives a fuck if that person's schizophrenic, or if, like Stephen Hawking, they're in a wheelchair, or who would give a fuck if they're gay or any other fucking identity marker? And then to come back around to, okay, so we'll leave aside those labels and just the idea that Peterson has had a difficult life. He's experienced mentally things that are similar to people with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or just depression, or other people who've had akathesia or whatever. That makes it, to me, more admirable that he's done what he's done with his life, having had all those fucking difficulties. How many people who have none of that shit have contributed 1/10 of what Peterson has to society? And how many of you out there could do what you're doing now, let alone what he's done, if you had that kind of depression, family problems, and shit to deal with? That's all heroic, not something to use to put him down. And then beyond that, it obviously, like, the reason we like Peterson is his brain doesn't work like everyone else's. Neither does Eric Weinstein's, or it's like these interesting people. It's because their brains work differently. And the idea of splashing headlines of drug problems and schizophrenia, as if that means we can ignore him. Like, the number of brilliant artists, musicians, poets, philosophers, just the wealth of genius, even in science, that we've gotten from people like Cantor or the Beautiful Mind guy, or who are schizophrenic or have some major fucking illness. Van Gogh, I mean, you can look up the amazing people who've had major mental problems, and it's a combination of having to deal with the mental problems or because defining them as mental illnesses and mental problems, even the way I'm talking about it isn't great, because that's as if it's only negative. These things come with a negative and a positive. It's the fact that our brains don't work the way everyone else's does that allows us to see things differently. And if you mix that with genius and hard work, you can produce something amazing. And also with the idea, like people throwing around the term drug problem, it makes it sound as if Peterson started fucking drinking or that he was taking some recreational or illegal drug on his own. He got prescribed something. And I also found this very interesting in the criticism, or like the attitude towards Peterson and Michaela and his family on this. Is early on when he talks about taking the benzos, people criticize him of, well, shouldn't you have known better than to take that drug? Why did you just take that drug? Because you were prescribed it. You should have known better than that. Like the criticism is that he followed doctor's orders without questioning. And then when it comes to the point where he's fucking dying and they decide to take him off to Russia, the criticism is, why didn't you listen to the doctors? Like all this pressure put on Michaela. What if it had been wrong? Why are you researching things and questioning doctors? Why aren't you listening to the medical establishment? It's like the fucking power of frames. And that's the switch to, you can look for the problem in all of it. It's easy after when something went wrong. Why didn't you? Fuck, there's too much in my head right now to say all at once. And I think I trailed off from something. I just completely blanked again. For most of the time that I was talking, it was taking so much mental focus to keep up with what I was saying that it was as if I wasn't live on YouTube, even though that's the reason I was focusing on what I was trying to say. Well, it comes around, Peterson talked about it also in the interview. A disassociation. I fell into that in the times I was rambling. I was just focused on what I was saying and I wasn't even thinking about why. And now it's sunk in that there's a bunch of people watching live and that seized my brain up. I hope some of what I said was actually valuable. I cannot get back to where my brain was. Sorry about this. Well, yeah, fuck, I knew I wasn't anywhere near the optimal state to be doing this. So why did I push myself? Partly because I put out so little fucking content on the channel, and I am kind of feeling that pressure, even though I know I shouldn't. And partly because after I watched Michaela's thing last night where she said her dad wasn't going to respond, and it's like, obviously this has really upset the whole fucking family, and it did make me think Peterson shouldn't have to respond to this. Other people should come to his defense. And so it was somewhat out of feeling like I owe something to the community here because I haven't been doing much content, and partially because it was a feeling of Like, even though I'm such a small voice, it doesn't matter. It was partially out of trying to support the Peterson family. All right, I'm going to take a look at the chat. All right, so overall, hi everyone. Hey James, good to see you here. Although I don't know how long ago that is. If people, fuck, do I respond to the beginning or I don't know. I hope I said something good at the beginning of this. I'm not feeling really optimistic about what I'm going to say next. Okay, so Christo said JP is a great man, but flawed like all of us. And hello, Billy the Kid. Yeah, some of the criticism of Jordan Peterson is if it's like they're just comparing him to some fucking archetype or a myth. When people start criticizing Peterson, it's like, yeah, compared to what though? He spent his whole he's had a lot of difficulties over his life, and he spent it he's obviously a genius. He comes up with things that actually help people. And he's devoted his life to trying to help people. But of course, he's got plenty of flaws. Everybody does. Okay, so Truth Seeker says the diagnosis seems off. Jordan Peterson seems a very mentally solid person. In one way, he's very solid, but I do like I could see why you could argue the flip side of that. He does have a lot of depression now, whether or not you call that mental stability or not. But to me, he's got the line between genius and insanity is very blurred. Peterson obviously has experienced non-typical mental states for whatever reason. But to me, that's just added a depth to his work. Well, to me, he wouldn't be him without the okay, so to say he's a flawed person, just like all of us, is that we're supposed to forgive the flaws or whatever, or listen to him despite the flaws. I don't think it's just Peterson's brilliance and dedication and high conscientiousness, hardworking that is the reason his work is so interesting and compelling. It's those things plus all the depression, difficulties, visionary experiences, and the non-typical ways his brain functions put together that makes his work genius. That's one of the reasons the difficult parts of his experience, it's not like he's come up with something great despite that. It's because of that. Hi, Daniel. Good to see you. I'm just going to read the chat for a minute and rest my brain. Talking is really wearing it out. Okay, Curtis says, just because this gave me a thought, the Times piece, a total hit piece. There's a way she could have questioned them as a journalist and still behaved professionally. She chose not to. So here's the thing for all of us. When we choose to manipulate reality, whether by lying or whether by choosing specific things to focus on, whether it's slight twists, that just the attempt to reframe things in a critical manner. When we use dishonesty or manipulative reframings for our personal gain, not only is there the problem of what happens in that situation, because with this, it fucking obviously has been really difficult on the Peterson family. I imagine the way the schizophrenia thing was thrown around was hard on some people with schizophrenia to see that being thrown around like as an insult or accusation or whatever. Same thing with people who've had drug problems, whether fucking pharmaceutical or not. Like, who are we to blame to be so judgmental of others? The other thing is it corrodes our trust in each other. This pollution of the public information sphere, whether it's outright lies or whether it's the half-truths, the manipulations, aside from what it does in each specific situation, our ability to trust each other, our ability to work together, like even when we disagree, to come in good faith, to have the best of intentions with each other, like this is how we got here. When you look at the work of like Yuval Noah Harari, when he talks about like what's the difference between us and all the other, Neanderthals and such that were taken out, what makes humankind unique and allows us to do as well as we've done, as he says, it's the stories that we learn to tell, the fictions we learn to make, because they enable us to trust each other. He points out if you took one human, one chimpanzee, and put them on an island, the chimpanzee would be in charge. The human would either be dead or it would be following the chimp's rules. If you put 10 people on an island and 10 chimps, the chimps will be able to take the people out. 100, I think, same thing. But if you put 1,000 humans on an island and 1,000 chimps, then the humans win. Because chimps can only work together in small bands, small groups. Humans have found a way. We do it through our fictions, our society, civilization, religions. All these things are the tribalism, which we're getting the downside of at the moment. The upside of that is it allows you to work with a larger group of people. If you can trust your whole country, then your country can move forward. The more we can trust each other and the more we work together, like that's how humanity survives. That's our real power. We look often at the natural resources, what we're doing to the environment, that we're using up and how we're polluting the environment. Our trust, our ability to trust each other, our ability to work together is such a precious natural resource, and we're burning that up at the moment. Every time, like whether it's publicly, like this article, or in your private life, every time you betray someone's trust, it just hardens them against the world. When you look at all the problems going on, like in the news, like on any issue, where both sides are doing this, dehumanizing the other side, it's like on all these issues, it's just breaking down our trust, so none of us know who to believe anymore. Hi, Sally. Okay, I don't know how long ago this is from, but Sally wrote, "It's good man do it poorly than not at all." Because I've said more than once how badly I'm doing. Hi, Sally. Everyone should go check out Sally Jo M. Cooper's channel. She puts out way more content than I do. And she's awesome. Thanks for being here. And thanks for the encouragement. I love you. Okay, and Sally says this is kicking my butt to make one I've been putting off. Not a response, but related to current events. I think so anyway. So yeah, so maybe anyone who's interested in hearing more on this, Sally will be putting out a video sometime soon. And Carlo says, I can figure out myself whether somebody's content is valuable or not, regardless of diagnosis or lack of. And yeah, Longstone puts it well. It should be about the basis of what you're actually saying, not ad hominem dismissal. Me and Sally both agree 100%. And Mr. Miyagi says newswoman got good pay after that. Only that explains this. I don't know, and I'm not meaning to attack the woman who did the interview. I don't know why she did it the way she did it. We get stuck in our frames. I don't know if it was malicious or not. I hope in no way this has come across judgmental of her. I'm trying to discuss more the pattern and like the specific actions, not the person. I don't know how to put that any better. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well. And yeah, my thought is just let's not be too judgmental of anyone. There's reasons we're all making the mistakes we're making. You know, the whole judge not lest ye be judged, and there but for the grace of God go I. So if you're religious, you know, remind yourself what all the great sages in Christ said. Remove the beam from your own eye before removing the splinter in your brother's. And if you're not religious at all, you know, look at what Sam Harris says about how free will doesn't appear to exist anyway. We're all a result of our inner nature, which we don't choose, and our environment. And we all are in this together. All right, so James was still here when I asked that. Oscar wants a recap of what? Yeah, and a couple people wrote schizophrenia diagnosis. What the fuck, JP schizophrenic? Um, yeah, I came on responding to the Times article, which says that Jordan Peterson got a diagnosis, and so one doctor apparently did say, or maybe more than one. I remember him saying bipolar as well. Like some doctors did say that maybe rather than it being the drugs or diet or whatnot, that Jordan Peterson's schizophrenic or bipolar. It appears that no, he's not either of those things. But I talked, yeah, you can rewind it. I talked earlier about how I don't think it fucking matters whether his depression, visionary experiences, and all of that is due to schizophrenia or it's due to an autoimmune disorder. It's irrelevant. Oh, okay, Longstone answered that in chat anyway. How far behind am I? Okay, I'm not that far behind. I don't know. Did I cover what I said I was going to cover? So Malenko writes, "Hi Merc, I'm surprised Jordan did not know the dangers of benzos. He has so much wisdom, but like all of us, have flaws. Much blessings, and lots of lunatic love back to you. Thanks for being here." I don't know. I'm not surprised he didn't know the dangers of benzos myself. Like, he was prescribed it by a doctor, and when he first started taking it, he didn't notice any side effects. None of us know anything. Or sorry, none of us know everything. But on another point, none of us know anything. That's something Peterson has said. Like, a lot of the thinkers I admire at one point say, look, when you dig right down to it, none of us know anything. Um, if you keep asking why a lot, you come down to something where a person has made some sort of axiomatic or intuitive understanding of something. Sovereign Erie says Jordan Peterson isn't all bad, but he is there to turn his audience, mainly white men, away from what will help them, nationalism, and keep them nicely behaved, good wage slaves. I don't know that his audience is like, I agree with Peterson when he says he's fundamentally a psychologist and that it's not appropriate to politicize his shit. If the largest demographic that watches his videos is white men, um, I think that could be completely understood if the majority of YouTube views are from white men. It's not like Peterson's ever aimed to help white men. From what I can tell, he doesn't give a shit about that whatsoever. Like, and in lots of interviews, people will try to bring out the misogyny angle as if he's anti-women. So, like in the, I think the GQ and the Kathy Newman interview, they would say that because he's suggesting, based on research, that the wage gap isn't just because of sexism, that he's misogynistic or anti-women. However, Peterson will go on to say it's because of certain traits that women, whether it's natural that women are less assertive in advocating for their rights or higher in agreeableness, or whether they're culturally that's encouraged in them. He said that one factor is that women don't advocate for themselves enough, don't do the work, like push for the raise, take credit, that kind of shit. And the reason he brings that up is because he's spent a good amount of time actually helping women with exactly that. He's had women clients. I think he was talking like in the law field or whatever. But anyway, that he would go through with them, helping them on how to advocate for themselves more, how to get a raise, how to be more assertive in a work environment. And so he's actually dedicated many, many, many hours of his life to helping specific women do better in their workplace, get higher salaries, and to spread that. He's not saying it's not all sexism, as in, oh, it's not all sexism, shut up and accept the lower pay. He's trying to point out one of the other factors involved in this, in which he actually has advice that can help people. From what I can tell, Peterson is pro human. He's pro man, he's pro woman, he's even pro trans, from what I can understand. His objection wasn't, to helping trans people. His objection was the way they were trying to do it. But he's actually dedicated a large amount of his time to helping women specifically do better. So it seems to me like Peterson just wants to help people. And the idea, even if his audience were mainly white men, who gives a fuck? The majority of his students were women. People show up where they show up. And maybe I'm projecting, but it seems to me like Peterson just wants to help whoever he can. And it's not his fault if more white men show up to some things. I don't know why that's being focused on so much. Sovereign Erie says tribalism is great when it's not a diverse area. That takes me to Yuval Harari again. Like tribalism or nationalism, it's like that's great compared to just caring about yourself. Being able to care about a whole tribe, or even on the most fundamental level, being able to care about your family and not just yourself is better. Being able to care about a tribe and not just your family is better. Being able to care about a nation as opposed to just your area with the nation's better. But then being able to care about everyone is an improvement beyond that. And when it comes to globalism or nationalism, it's like I think we need both with these things. I think the reason there's there's that diversity within our population. Naturally, some of us think more locally. Some of us are more have more national pride and care less about like the global. And some people are more geared to think about things globally. If we can just get all these people working together, that's wonderful. Like if each area of the world has a portion of the people living there who's just focused on making that area the best, great. They can focus on making that area. Like watch out for the local interests. And if you also have people looking to help with the global interaction, it's like then you get all these pockets of wonderful space that fuck, I'm not explaining this right. I'm just gonna quit. Do I quit the whole stream or I'm just gonna quit that idea. Okay. Sovereign followed up. People who are more alike work better with each other on every level of characteristic. The United States needs to split blue and red to keep the peace. You need to find a band of brothers. I think that's one side of it. Like sometimes people who are more alike can work together more easily. Like we can work together more easily if we identify with someone. Even if you're just randomly put into two groups and one group's given orange bracelets and the other blue, there is something in our head that responds to the us and them shit. It's more comfortable to have an us. But you can expand that out doing the fucking hippie new age shit or the Eastern shit or the Christian shit of agapic love. And if you can spread that out so everybody is an us. Now, there will still be a dynamic of course, it's easier to be around people who are more like you in certain ways at times. Like, you don't always want to be surrounded by people with the opposite opinions. Like, it's stressful, but you also just I don't think you want to just completely separate. Because there's something about the dynamic of tensions and differences, and it's a balance, I think, of having people like you and people who are not like you. It's like I have three things in my head on that subject all trying to come out at once, and they're like the Three Stooges all stuck in the door suddenly. All right, I'm just going to trail off there again. Take a sec. I don't know. Maybe I'm done, or maybe I just need to take a minute. Sorry about this. All right, so the Cal wrote, Jordan Peterson doesn't have schizophrenia. It was a smear from the Times, a news organization from Australia. Peterson has akathesia from a misdiagnosis leading to a benzodependency. Yes, this was my reaction to, well, and I think it is technically accurate that one doctor did diagnose him as schizophrenic, but that looks like that doctor was wrong. If you check back at the beginning, so yeah, someone coming in at the wrong time might have thought I was talking as if Jordan Peterson has schizophrenia. I'm aware he doesn't, but I make the point earlier that even if that were the reason for his depression, that it wouldn't matter. Puka says, I'm from Singapore and like Peterson. Well, hey, what's it like in Singapore at the moment? And I agree with you, Mista. Jordan Peterson is a good dude. He's gotten emotional so many times in interviews about people he's helped. Carlo writes, caring for something bigger than yourself is a win-win solution situation. Yeah, I think Jordan Peterson's fucking great. No, he's not perfect. He's got flaws. But I think the flaws he's got are the flaws he was meant to have. And it's the imperfections that make us what we are. But I don't understand all the negative media against Peterson. Like he spent his whole life working on things to try to help people. He's had a lot of difficulties that most of us could not deal with. He's pushed through and done amazing things in the world. I think he's a fantastic person. Ruka says, akathesia is a condition that looks like schizophrenia, but if you treat it with the method that is used for schizophrenia, then it makes the people crazy and highly suicidal. Yeah, when I was saying earlier that it doesn't matter whether it's schizophrenia or akathesia, I did make that point. Yeah, it matters from the perspective of treatment and whatnot. What I meant is that it wouldn't matter as to whether or not Peterson was a good person or whether or not his work was worth listening to. I know I skipped a bunch of shit there, but yeah, I don't know. Do we just stop here? Okay, now that I'm caught up, I will respond to anything in chat. Did I trail off somewhere that's worth going back to? Or does anyone have any questions? Hello, Bravery. How are you? Cal writes, what are the limits of diversity? Glad to hear you're good, Bravery. Okay, my brain went a lot of places at once. Like anything, there's ups and downsides to things. It's about balance or it's about extremes at the right time. Um, but it's like, what kind of diversity are you talking about? Are you talking about like the demographic diversity? Are you talking about diversity in that we want neurodivergent or neuro non-typical people? Diversity of ideas. There's all kinds of diversity. And obviously not any kind of diversity is good. You don't want diversity on you wouldn't want diversity in a room on what's on fire or not. Well, except sometimes you do. You want a candle. But I mean, you don't want a diversity of people with injuries in a room. Like you want everyone to not be injured. I A lot of diversity is irrelevant. Sometimes you don't want diversity in certain situations. Sometimes you want as much as possible. Sometimes it's a balance. And Jock writes, he doesn't have schizophrenia. Yeah, this was my response to the schizophrenia diagnosis. If you go back to earlier, I'm aware he doesn't have schizophrenia. But I was standing up in defense of people who do have schizophrenia. Someone can have schizophrenia, and if they can work through it and do all the things Peterson has done, then the fact that they have schizophrenia would be no reason to dismiss them. I think this is all just one blur. I don't even remember what I said earlier, clearly. But I think I made that point fully at the beginning. Okay, so the Cal says the type of diversity that Trudeau refers to when he says diversity is our strength. If there is such a thing as too much, who can determine that point and point it out? Well, I think that comes down to like what Peterson or Jonathan Haidt talk about is that's complex. No one person, no one answer is going to solve that. That's probably why we have the two types of personality, the more conservative and the high and low openness. We need some people worried about the problems of too much diversity, and we need some people worried about the problems of not enough diversity, and we need lots of people to not be thinking about that issue at all. And we need both sides to work together and try to figure it out. But again, it's like, what kind of diversity? Just like diversity of skin color, to me, that's really irrelevant. James says one limit of diversity is a collection of people with no shared values or agreement on what to aim at. Without anything to unite people, the only way to organize is violence. So, yeah, like, again, you don't want too much diversity of thought in certain areas, like whether or not we should be killing people. Whether, there's all that ridiculous shit. You don't want diversity in thought when it comes to rape. We just want everyone to agree. No fucking rape. It's really hard to just talk about diversity in general like that. Okay, Ruka says, COVID is making a new normal in Singapore. We have an 8 packs. Is that 8 max per house visit limit now? We use a Bluetooth app that don't keep data past 14 days for every shopping mall. As a quarantine, as a QR to enter malls for tracing. See, I'm a fucking shut-in. I've been a hermit for over a decade. I can forget COVID's going on because I was already a complete fucking shut-in. Like, I get my supplies dropped off. I almost never leave this farm. It's weird the way the world's being reported as changing. Because I only see it through reports, what people tell me. Okay, the Cal writes, I'd like to have diversity of thought. If it's of a philosophical nature, then I can discuss. I would be really interested in engaging in an argument, even of a morally taboo nature. Well, okay, here's the other thing about diversity of thought. It can be a good or a bad thing, depending on the game we choose to play with it. The diversity of thought is only beneficial if the people can talk to each other in good faith. It's like if both sides of an issue can be honest, authentic, enter in good faith, recognize like the limitations of ourselves, to be engaging not for the sake of proving you're right, but of just honestly sharing your perspective. And like each person should be looking for where they're wrong, not looking for where the other side is wrong. If we can get the two poles of each kind of diversity working together, then it can be great. If instead we choose to dehumanize, demonize, separate, we come in trying to make our side win. If the participants haven't done their shadow work, then it can devolve into fighting. Fuck, I have more to say on that, but it's like the part of my brain that isn't words that has more to say. And the part of my brain that works in words is fucking exhausted. I'm sorry I didn't do a better job with this. I've got things coming into my head that I wanted to say and didn't, and fuck, with the depression, I'm just grinding gears inside my skull. Yeah, I think I'm going to wrap this up. Sorry. Well, thanks for being here. Hope everyone's okay. I know it's stressful times for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. So let's just make the best of our own situations. You know, compare ourselves to who we were yesterday, not someone else. To tell the truth, aim at the good, No matter how low you're beaten down, you know, make any fucking small improvement you can. Or if you can't make any improvements, just don't make things worse. When you're discouraged, we could always make it worse. There's always a deeper layer of hell. If you're really, really struggling, then just do your best not to make things worse. If you can make one little improvement, make one little improvement. And if you can use the power of your attention, you can line it up with compassion, love, sympathy, and understanding that we're all limited. Small acts of kindness to people spread. Do your best. Do your best to be good to each other. Yeah, God bless. Lunatic love to all.